The sun beat down on Dust Devil Gulch, baking the already parched earth. It was a town that had seen better days, a place where dreams went to die, and hope was a rare commodity. 3 figures huddled in the meager shade of a dilapidated wagon, their faces etched with worry. These were the sisters, Sarah, the eldest at 17, her brow perpetually furrowed with the weight of responsibility. Emily, 15, her eyes reflecting a quiet strength that belied her age, and Lily, barely 8, her small face a mirror of innocence, struggling to understand the harsh realities of their world. They were orphans, left to fend for themselves after a bout of fever took both their parents within weeks of each other. The townsfolk, hardened by years of struggle, offered pity but little else. Food was scarce, work even scarcer, and the sisters clung to each other, their bond the only thing keeping them afloat in a sea of despair. Sarah did what she could, taking in laundry, mending clothes, anything to earn a few precious coins. Emily, quicker and more nimble, sometimes managed to find odd jobs at the saloon, scrubbing floors or washing dishes, enduring the leering gazes and crude remarks with a stoic silence. Lily, too young to work, helped where she could, gathering scraps of wood for the fire, her small hands calloused and rough. Their days were a constant struggle, a relentless cycle of hunger, exhaustion, and fear. They slept huddled together in the wagon, the canvas offering little protection from the elements. The nights were filled with the sounds of the town, the raucous laughter from the saloon, the mournful howl of coyotes in the distance, and the ever-present fear of what tomorrow might bring. Despite their hardships, the sisters clung to a flicker of hope. They dreamed of a better life, a place where they could feel safe and secure, where Lily could laugh without a shadow in her eyes, where Sarah could finally lay down her burdens, and where Emily could find peace. But in Dust Devil Gulch, dreams were a luxury they could scarcely afford. The dust swirled around them, a constant reminder of their precarious existence, of the relentless challenges they faced each and every day. Their story was just beginning, a story of abandonment, resilience, and the unexpected kindness that can bloom even in the most barren of landscapes. The relentless hardship of Dust Devil Gulch was about to escalate. One sweltering afternoon, while Sarah and Emily were out trying to scrape together a few coins, disaster struck. A fire, sparked by a carelessly discarded cigar in the saloon, quickly spread through the dry, wooden buildings. The wind, a constant presence in the desolate landscape, fanned the flames, turning the town into an inferno. Lily, left alone in the wagon, was awakened by the acrid smell of smoke. Panic seized her as she saw the orange glow reflecting off the canvas. She scrambled out, coughing and choking, to find the town engulfed in flames. Buildings were collapsing, sending up plumes of smoke and sparks that rained down like fiery tears. People were screaming, running in every direction, their faces blackened with soot. In the chaos, Lily became separated from the wagon, lost in the swirling smoke and the panicked crowd. She called out for her sisters, her voice a tiny, desperate cry swallowed by the roar of the fire. The heat was intense, searing her skin, and the smoke burned her lungs. She stumbled blindly through the inferno, her heart pounding with terror. Sarah and Emily, seeing the smoke billowing from the town, raced back, their hearts filled with dread. They pushed their way through the throng of fleeing townsfolk, desperately searching for Lily. The scene that greeted them was one of utter devastation. Their wagon, their only home, was engulfed in flames, reduced to a smoldering wreck. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she screamed Lily's name, her voice hoarse with fear. Emily, her face grim, grabbed Sarah's arm, urging her forward. "We have to find her," she shouted above the din. They searched frantically, dodging falling debris and battling through the smoke-filled streets. The fire raged on, consuming everything in its path, leaving behind a trail of destruction and despair. When the fire finally subsided, leaving only smoldering ruins and ash, the sisters were left with nothing. Their home, their meager possessions, everything was gone. And worse, Lily was still missing. They were truly abandoned and broken, with no hope in sight, alone in a town reduced to ashes. The future seemed bleak, a desolate landscape mirroring the charred remains of Dust Devil Gulch. Days turned into nights, each one a torturous echo of the last. Sarah and Emily refused to give up hope, tirelessly searching the ruins of Dust Devil Gulch for any sign of Lily. They called her name until their voices were raw, their throats aching with grief and exhaustion. The townsfolk, preoccupied with their own losses, offered little help, their pity a cold comfort in the face of such profound despair. One morning, driven by desperation, Sarah and Emily decided to expand their search beyond the town limits. They walked for miles, their feet blistered and bleeding, their eyes scanning the horizon for any clue, any indication of where Lily might be. The sun beat down mercilessly, and the landscape stretched before them, an endless expanse of barren land. As dusk began to settle, casting long shadows across the plains, they stumbled upon a small, dilapidated cabin nestled in a shallow ravine. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, offering a faint glimmer of hope. With nothing to lose, they approached cautiously, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Before they could knock, the door creaked open, revealing a figure silhouetted against the warm glow of the firelight. He was a man of imposing stature, his face weathered and lined, his eyes piercing and watchful. A thick, unkempt beard covered his chin, and his clothes were rough and worn, suggesting a life lived far from civilization. This was Jebediah, or Jeb, as he was known to the few souls who had ever crossed his path. A mountain man, a loner, a man who preferred the company of animals to people. Jebediah stood there, silent and unmoving, his gaze fixed on the two young women. He had seen much in his life, much hardship and suffering, and his face reflected the weight of those experiences. He wasn't expecting visitors, especially not two young women who looked as though they had been through hell and back. He grunted, a sound that could have been mistaken for a greeting or a warning. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice rough and gravelly, like stones grinding together. Sarah, summoning all her courage, stepped forward. "We're looking for our sister," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Her name is Lily. She's 8 years old. We lost her in the fire." Jebediah's eyes narrowed, his gaze hardening. He knew about the fire. Everyone within a 50-mile radius knew about the fire. He also knew that Dust Devil Gulch was a place best avoided. But something in the girls' desperate plea, in the raw pain etched on their faces, stirred something within him, a flicker of long-dormant compassion. He hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside, gesturing for them to enter. "Come in," he said, his voice still gruff, but with a hint of something else, something that sounded almost like kindness. "Tell me everything." As Sarah recounted the events leading up to the fire and Lily's disappearance, Jebediah listened intently, his gaze unwavering. He offered them hot stew, the first real meal they had eaten in days, and let them rest by the fire. While they ate, he studied them, observing their quiet strength and their unwavering determination to find their sister. He knew what it was like to lose everything. He knew the gnawing emptiness that came with grief and the burning desire for hope. The next morning, as the sun rose over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold, Jebediah made a decision. He couldn't just stand by and watch these two young women suffer. He had spent years isolating himself from the world, burying his own pain and loss, but something about their story resonated with him. He knew the search would be difficult, perhaps even futile, but he couldn't turn his back on them. "I'll help you find your sister," he said, his voice still gruff, but with a newfound resolve. Sarah and Emily looked at him in disbelief, their eyes widening with hope. "You will?" Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. Jebediah nodded. "I know these lands," he said. "I know where to look, but it won't be easy. It will be dangerous." As they prepared to leave, a lone figure appeared on the horizon, riding towards them on a weary-looking horse. He was dressed in simple clothes, his face clean-shaven, his eyes filled with a gentle kindness. This was Caleb, a traveling preacher, seeking to bring solace and faith to the scattered communities of the West. Caleb dismounted his horse and approached the cabin, his gaze falling upon Sarah, Emily, and Jebediah. He had heard rumors of the fire in Dust Devil Gulch and the missing child. He felt a calling to offer whatever help he could. "I am Caleb," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "I heard about the fire and the missing girl. I would like to offer my assistance." Jebediah eyed Caleb with suspicion. He didn't trust preachers. He had seen too much hypocrisy in the world to put his faith in organized religion. But he couldn't deny the sincerity in Caleb's eyes, the genuine desire to help. He grunted, his usual sign of reluctant acceptance. "We're going to look for her," Jebediah said, gesturing towards Sarah and Emily. "You can come if you want, but don't expect any miracles." And so, an unlikely alliance was formed. A grizzled mountain man, two desperate sisters, and a traveling preacher, united by a common goal, to find Lily and bring her home. Their journey was just beginning, a journey filled with danger, uncertainty, and the promise of hope in the most unexpected of places. Their journey began at dawn, the rising sun casting long shadows before them. Jebediah led the way, his weathered face set with determination, his rifle slung across his back. He moved with a quiet confidence, his knowledge of the land evident in every step. Sarah and Emily followed close behind, their faces etched with a mixture of hope and anxiety. Caleb brought up the rear, his presence a quiet reassurance, his gentle demeanor a stark contrast to Jebediah's gruff exterior. As they traveled, Caleb's past began to subtly reveal itself. He often stared into the distance, a melancholic expression clouding his eyes. He spoke of forgiveness and redemption, but his words carried a weight of personal experience, a sense of battles fought and scars earned. He would often pause, offering prayers for Lily's safety, his voice filled with a quiet sincerity that even Jebediah couldn't dismiss. One evening, as they sat around a crackling campfire, Emily, emboldened by Caleb's gentle nature, asked him about his past. "You seem like you've seen a lot, Caleb," she said, her voice soft. "What brought you to the West?" Caleb hesitated for a moment, his gaze fixed on the flames. He knew that revealing his past would be a risk, but he also felt a connection to these young women, a sense of shared pain and loss. "I wasn't always a preacher," he began, his voice low and hesitant. "I used to be a gambler, a drifter, living a life of sin and regret. I made a lot of mistakes, hurt a lot of people. One night, my actions led to a tragedy that haunts me to this day." He paused, his eyes filled with pain. "I lost my family because of my selfishness. My wife and my daughter." His voice trailed off, choked with emotion. "After that, I turned to God, seeking forgiveness and a way to atone for my sins. I came west to find redemption, to help others and make amends for the mistakes of my past." His confession hung in the air, a somber reminder of the burdens that people carried, the secrets they kept hidden beneath the surface. Sarah and Emily listened in silence, their hearts filled with compassion for this man who had suffered so much. Jebediah, too, was moved by Caleb's story, though he remained silent, his face unreadable. He understood the weight of the past, the burden of regret. He carried his own secrets, his own pain, buried deep within his heart. As the fire crackled and the stars twinkled above, the unlikely companions shared a moment of understanding, a bond forged in the crucible of loss and the shared hope for a brighter future. Their journey to find Lily was not just a search for a missing child, but a journey of self-discovery, redemption, and the healing power of human connection. As they continued their search, Jebediah's gruff exterior began to soften. He had initially agreed to help out of a sense of obligation, a flicker of compassion that he tried to suppress. But as he witnessed Sarah and Emily's unwavering dedication to finding Lily, their fierce love for each other, and their resilience in the face of adversity, something inside him began to change. He saw how Sarah, despite her own grief and exhaustion, constantly put Emily's needs first, ensuring she was fed, rested, and protected. He observed Emily's quiet strength, her willingness to endure hardship without complaint, her unwavering faith that they would find Lily. He noticed how they shared stories of Lily, their voices filled with love and laughter, their memories painting a vivid picture of the bright, innocent child they were so desperately trying to find. One day, as they were tracking a faint set of footprints near a creek, Emily stumbled and fell, scraping her knee. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she quickly brushed them away, determined not to show weakness. Jebediah, without a word, knelt down and examined her knee. He pulled out a clean cloth from his pack and gently cleaned the wound. "It's just a scratch," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "But you need to keep it clean." Emily looked up at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Jebediah," she said softly. He simply nodded, his face unreadable, but Sarah saw a flicker of something in his eyes, a hint of tenderness that he quickly masked. Later that evening, as they sat around the campfire, Jebediah surprised them by sharing a story from his own past. He spoke of his own family, his wife and daughter, who had died years ago from a sickness. He had never spoken of them to anyone before, keeping his grief locked away inside him for years. As he spoke, his voice cracked with emotion, and tears welled up in his eyes. Sarah and Emily listened in silence, their hearts filled with compassion for this man who had suffered so much. In that moment, the bond between them deepened. Jebediah was no longer just a gruff mountain man, a reluctant helper. He was a fellow human being, sharing their pain, their loss, and their hope. He realized that he was no longer just helping them find Lily. He was helping himself. He was allowing himself to feel again, to connect with others, to find meaning in his life after years of isolation. The sisters' love and resilience were slowly cracking his hardened exterior, revealing the kind, compassionate man he had buried deep inside. The journey was still dangerous, the outcome still uncertain, but they were no longer alone. They had each other, and they had Jebediah, a man whose heart was slowly thawing, warmed by the unwavering love of two sisters. Throughout their arduous journey, Caleb served as a pillar of spiritual strength for Sarah and Emily. He understood the depths of their despair, the feeling of being abandoned by God, and he gently guided them back to their faith. He didn't preach fire and brimstone, but rather offered words of comfort, reminding them of God's unwavering love and the promise of hope, even in the darkest of times. Each evening, as they gathered around the campfire, Caleb would read passages from the Bible, his voice soothing and resonant. He spoke of perseverance, of forgiveness, and of the power of prayer. He encouraged Sarah and Emily to share their fears and doubts, to voice their anger and frustration, and to find solace in their shared faith. Sarah, who had always been the more pragmatic of the two sisters, initially struggled with Caleb's spiritual guidance. She questioned how a loving God could allow such tragedy to befall them, how he could stand by and watch as their lives were torn apart. Caleb listened patiently to her doubts, acknowledging her pain, but gently reminding her that faith was not about understanding everything, but about trusting in something greater than herself. Emily, on the other hand, found comfort in Caleb's words. She had always been more spiritual than Sarah, finding solace in prayer and believing in the power of divine intervention. Caleb helped her to strengthen her faith, to see the good in the world, even amidst the suffering. He reminded her that God was always with them, guiding them, and protecting them, even when they couldn't see it. One day, as they were crossing a particularly treacherous mountain pass, a sudden rock slide threatened to bury them alive. Fear gripped them as they scrambled for safety, dodging falling rocks and clinging to the steep cliffs. In the midst of the chaos, Caleb began to pray, his voice rising above the roar of the rocks. He prayed for their safety, for their strength, and for God's guidance. As if in answer to his prayer, the rock slide suddenly stopped, leaving them shaken but unharmed. Sarah and Emily looked at each other in amazement, their eyes filled with awe. They couldn't explain what had happened, but they knew that something extraordinary had saved them. From that moment on, Sarah's skepticism began to fade, replaced by a newfound respect for Caleb's faith and the power of prayer. She realized that even in the face of unimaginable loss and hardship, there was still hope, still faith, and still the possibility of a brighter future. Caleb's spiritual guidance had helped them find strength in their despair, reminding them that they were not alone, that God was with them, and that even in the darkest of times, there was always a light to guide them. Their journey took them through increasingly dangerous territory, the landscape becoming more rugged and unforgiving. They were venturing into the heart of outlaw country, a lawless region where bandits roamed freely, preying on unsuspecting travelers. Jebediah, ever vigilant, kept a watchful eye on the horizon, his rifle always within reach. One afternoon, as they were making their way through a narrow canyon, they were ambushed by a gang of ruthless outlaws, led by a notorious bandit named Snake Thompson. The outlaws emerged from the shadows, their faces masked, their guns drawn, their intentions clear. Well, Snake sneered, his voice raspy and menacing. Look what we have here. A preacher, a mountain man, and two pretty little ladies. Looks like we hit the jackpot. Jebediah and Caleb immediately sprang into action, positioning themselves between the sisters and the outlaws. Stay behind us, Jebediah growled, his voice low and dangerous. This is going to get ugly. Caleb, despite his peaceful nature, was no stranger to violence. He had seen his fair share of bloodshed in his past life, and he knew how to defend himself. He drew a small pistol from his coat, his eyes filled with a steely resolve. "We don't want any trouble," Caleb said, his voice calm but firm. "Just let us pass." Snake Thompson laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. "Trouble is exactly what you're going to get," he said. "We're taking your horses, your supplies, and anything else of value you're carrying. And maybe," he added, leering at Sarah and Emily, "we'll take a little something extra too." Jebediah and Caleb exchanged a look, their eyes communicating a silent understanding. They knew they were outnumbered, but they weren't about to back down. They wouldn't let these outlaws harm the sisters. "You'll have to go through us first," Jebediah said, his voice a low growl. The outlaws opened fire, the canyon erupting in a hail of bullets. Jebediah and Caleb returned fire, their shots accurate and deadly. The battle raged on, the air filled with the sound of gunfire, the smell of gunpowder, and the cries of the wounded. Sarah and Emily huddled behind a large rock, their hearts pounding with terror, praying for their survival. They watched in horror as Jebediah and Caleb fought valiantly, risking their lives to protect them. The conflict forced Jebediah and Caleb, two men from vastly different backgrounds, to work together, to trust each other, and to rely on each other's strengths. Their shared determination to protect the sisters forged an unbreakable bond between them, transforming them from reluctant allies into true brothers in arms. The outlaws had underestimated their resolve, their courage, and their unwavering commitment to protecting the innocent. After successfully fending off Snake Thompson's gang, though not without sustaining injuries, they found a secluded spot to rest and tend to their wounds. The near-death experience had left them shaken, but also more determined than ever to find Lily. As Caleb tended to a gash on Jebediah's arm, Sarah, her voice filled with concern, asked Jebediah a question that had been weighing on her mind. "Jebediah," she began hesitantly, "why do you live out here all alone? Why don't you want to be around people?" Jebediah stiffened, his face clouding over with a familiar darkness. He hesitated for a moment, then sighed, knowing that he couldn't keep his past hidden forever. He looked at Sarah and Emily, their faces filled with genuine concern, and he knew that they deserved an honest answer. "It's a long story," he said, his voice low and gravelly, "and it's not a pretty one." He paused, gathering his thoughts, then began to recount the events that had led him to his solitary existence. He spoke of his childhood, growing up in a small farming community, his life filled with love and happiness. He spoke of his wife, Martha, a woman with a heart of gold, and his daughter, Abigail, a bright, cheerful child who brought joy to everyone she met. "We were happy," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. We had everything we ever wanted. But then, he continued, his voice barely a whisper, tragedy struck. He spoke of a brutal winter, a devastating blizzard that swept through their community, isolating them from the outside world. Food and supplies ran low, and sickness spread like wildfire. Martha and Abigail got sick, he said, tears welling up in his eyes. I did everything I could to save them, but it wasn't enough. They died in my arms, their bodies cold and lifeless. He paused, his voice choked with grief. After that, I lost everything. My home, my family, my hope. I couldn't bear to be around people anymore. I couldn't stand the thought of losing anyone else I cared about. He had withdrawn from the world, seeking solace in the solitude of the mountains. He had built a wall around his heart, determined never to let anyone get close enough to hurt him again. Sarah and Emily listened in silence, their hearts filled with compassion for this man who had suffered so much. They understood now why he was so gruff, so guarded, so reluctant to form attachments. His past was a heavy burden, a constant reminder of the pain and loss he had endured. Caleb, too, was moved by Jebediah's story. He understood the pain of loss, the weight of regret, and the desire to isolate oneself from the world. He offered Jebediah a comforting hand on his shoulder, a silent gesture of support. In that moment, their bond deepened, their shared pain forging an even stronger connection between them. Jebediah's revelation explained his solitary nature and his hesitation to form attachments, showcasing the inner pain that had driven him to seek refuge in the wilderness. His past was a reminder of the fragility of life and the devastating consequences of loss. The shared vulnerability of that night seemed to lift a weight from Caleb's shoulders as well. Witnessing Jebediah's pain and the sisters' unwavering resilience stirred something deep within him, forcing him to confront the guilt and regret that had haunted him for so long. He realized that his journey west wasn't just about seeking forgiveness from God, but also about forgiving himself. One morning, as they were preparing to break camp, Caleb announced that he needed to make a detour. He explained that there was someone he needed to see, someone he needed to make amends with. He didn't elaborate, but Sarah and Emily understood that he was finally ready to confront his past. He rode off alone, his face set with determination, leaving Jebediah and the sisters to continue their search for Lily. Days later, Caleb returned, his eyes filled with a newfound peace. He explained that he had traveled to a small town where he had once lived, a town where he had caused so much pain and suffering. He had sought out the family of the man he had wronged, the man whose death he felt responsible for. He had confessed his sins, apologized for his actions, and begged for their forgiveness. To his surprise, they had offered him their forgiveness, telling him that they had long ago let go of their anger and resentment. They had recognized his genuine remorse and his desire to make amends. Their forgiveness had been a balm to his wounded soul, a release from the guilt that had been consuming him for years. He realized that holding onto his guilt had been preventing him from moving forward, from finding true peace and happiness. By confronting his past and seeking forgiveness, he had finally freed himself from its grip. He returned to Jebediah and the sisters a changed man, his face radiating a newfound serenity. He explained that he now understood his purpose in life, that it wasn't just about preaching the word of God, but about helping others, about making a positive difference in the world. He realized that helping Sarah and Emily find Lily was not just an act of kindness, but an opportunity for him to atone for his past sins, to find redemption through service to others. He had found forgiveness and a renewed purpose in helping the sisters rebuild their lives, realizing that their journey was also his journey, a path towards healing and redemption. He was no longer running from his past, but embracing it, using it as a source of strength and inspiration. He was finally ready to move forward, to build a new life, a life filled with purpose, meaning, and love. His confrontation with his past had not only freed him from his guilt, but had also strengthened his faith, his compassion, and his commitment to helping others. While Jebediah and Caleb offered guidance and protection, Sarah, and Emily were far from helpless. They demonstrated their own bravery and resourcefulness, proving that they were more than capable of contributing to their survival. They learned quickly, adapting to the harsh environment and developing skills that surprised even themselves. Sarah, with her practical mind, proved to be adept at foraging for food. She learned to identify edible plants, set snares for small animals, and prepare meals over an open fire. She also took on the responsibility of managing their dwindling supplies, ensuring that they had enough food and water to sustain them on their journey. Emily, with her quiet strength and keen observation skills, became a skilled tracker. She learned to read the signs of the wilderness, identifying animal tracks, following faint trails, and noticing subtle changes in the environment. She often scouted ahead, ensuring that the path was safe and warning them of potential dangers. One day, while Jebediah and Caleb were out hunting, Sarah and Emily were left alone at the campsite. They were startled by the appearance of a lone wolf, its eyes glowing menacingly in the fading light. The wolf approached the camp cautiously, its intentions unclear. Fear gripped the sisters, but they knew that they couldn't panic. They had to protect themselves. Sarah grabbed a burning branch from the fire and waved it at the wolf, shouting loudly. Emily, remembering a trick she had learned from Jebediah, began banging pots and pans together, creating a loud, jarring noise. The wolf, startled by the sudden commotion, hesitated for a moment, then turned and fled into the darkness. Sarah and Emily breathed a sigh of relief, their hearts pounding with adrenaline. They had faced their fear and emerged victorious. Another time, while crossing a swollen river, their raft capsized, throwing them into the frigid water. Jebediah and Caleb managed to pull Sarah to safety, but Emily was swept away by the current. Without hesitation, Sarah plunged back into the river, swimming against the current to rescue her sister. She reached Emily just as she was about to be pulled under, grabbing her arm and pulling her to shore. Their bravery and resourcefulness not only contributed to their survival, but also earned the respect of Jebediah and Caleb. The two men realized that the sisters were not just damsels in distress, but strong, capable women who were determined to overcome any obstacle. The sisters demonstrated their bravery and resourcefulness, contributing significantly to their survival and proving that they were far from helpless. They learned to navigate the harsh environment, protect themselves from danger, and support each other through thick and thin. Their resilience and determination were an inspiration to Jebediah and Caleb, strengthening their bond and solidifying their commitment to finding Lily. After weeks of relentless searching, just as their hope began to dwindle, they finally found a clue. A small, tattered doll, clutched tightly in Lily's hand before the fire, lay half buried in the dirt near a deserted trading post. It was a sign, a beacon of hope, indicating that Lily had indeed passed through this area. They followed the faint trail, their hearts pounding with anticipation. The trail led them to a secluded valley, where they spotted a small cabin nestled among the trees. As they approached cautiously, they heard a faint sound, a child's laughter. They burst through the door, their eyes scanning the room. And there, sitting by the fire, was Lily. She was safe and sound, being cared for by an elderly Native American woman who had found her wandering alone in the wilderness. The reunion was emotional, filled with tears of joy and heartfelt embraces. Sarah and Emily held Lily tightly, never wanting to let her go again. Jebediah and Caleb watched the scene with a sense of profound satisfaction, their hearts warmed by the sight of the reunited sisters. As they settled into the cabin for the night, Lily, who had always been a perceptive and intuitive child, sensed the tension that still lingered between Jebediah and Caleb. Despite their shared experiences and their growing respect for each other, there was still a gap between them, a barrier built by their different backgrounds and beliefs. Lily, with her innocent charm and unwavering faith in the goodness of people, decided to bridge that gap. She approached Jebediah, who was sitting alone by the fire, his face etched with weariness. "Jebediah," she said softly, "can you tell me a story?" Jebediah, who had always been gruff and reserved, hesitated for a moment, then looked into Lily's trusting eyes. He couldn't refuse her request. He began to tell her a story, a simple tale of a brave young girl who overcame adversity and found happiness. As he spoke, his voice softened, his face relaxed, and he began to connect with the child on a deeper level. Lily then turned to Caleb, who was sitting nearby, reading his Bible. "Caleb," she said, "can you sing me a song?" Caleb, who had always been hesitant to share his musical talents, looked at Lily with a gentle smile. He couldn't resist her innocent request. He began to sing a hymn, his voice clear and resonant, filling the cabin with a sense of peace and tranquility. As Jebediah and Caleb shared their stories and songs with Lily, they began to see each other in a new light. They realized that despite their differences, they shared a common humanity, a capacity for love, compassion, and kindness. Lily, with her innocent charm, had helped them connect with their lost humanity, bridging the gap between them and forging a deeper bond of friendship and understanding. Her presence reminded them of the importance of faith, hope, and love, and the power of human connection to heal even the deepest wounds. Their newfound peace was short-lived. As they prepared to leave the valley, they were ambushed once again by Snake Thompson and his gang. It turned out that the elderly Native American woman who had cared for Lily was being forced to provide shelter to the outlaws, and they had been waiting for Jebediah and Caleb to return. This time, Snake Thompson was even more determined to capture them. He had learned that Jebediah was a skilled mountain man and that Caleb was no ordinary preacher. He wanted revenge for their previous defeat, and he wanted to claim the sisters as his own. The outlaws surrounded the cabin, their guns drawn, their faces filled with malice. "This is it, Jebediah," Snake Thompson shouted, his voice filled with hatred. "There's nowhere left to run. Surrender now, and maybe I'll let the little ladies live." Jebediah and Caleb exchanged a look, their eyes filled with determination. They knew that they were outnumbered, but they weren't about to surrender. They wouldn't let these outlaws harm the sisters. "We'll never surrender," Jebediah shouted back, his voice a low growl. "You'll have to kill us first." The outlaws opened fire, the cabin erupting in a hail of bullets. Jebediah and Caleb returned fire, their shots accurate and deadly. Sarah, Emily, and Lily huddled together in the corner of the cabin, their hearts pounding with terror. They watched in horror as Jebediah and Caleb fought valiantly, risking their lives to protect them. The battle raged on, the air filled with the sound of gunfire, the smell of gunpowder, and the cries of the wounded. Jebediah, despite his age, fought with the ferocity of a cornered wolf, his movements swift and deadly. Caleb, despite his peaceful nature, fought with a righteous fury, his shots guided by a sense of divine purpose. As the battle reached its climax, Snake Thompson managed to corner Sarah and Lily, holding them at gunpoint. "That's it, Jebediah," he shouted, his voice triumphant. "Drop your weapons, or I'll kill them both." Jebediah hesitated for a moment, his face etched with anguish. He couldn't let the sisters die. But then, Caleb, without hesitation, charged forward, tackling Snake Thompson to the ground. In the ensuing struggle, Snake Thompson's gun went off, hitting Caleb in the chest. Jebediah, seeing Caleb fall, flew into a rage. He charged towards Snake Thompson, his eyes filled with fury, and unleashed a brutal assault, disarming the outlaw and beating him mercilessly. The other outlaws, seeing their leader defeated, began to lose heart. Jebediah and Caleb's growing bond was showcased as Caleb sacrificed himself to save the sisters, spurring Jebediah into a rage-fueled defense. Their combined efforts demonstrated their unwavering commitment to protecting the sisters, solidifying their transformation into a true family. The outlaws were ultimately defeated, but not without a heavy price. With Snake Thompson defeated and his gang scattered, the immediate threat to the sisters was over. But the victory came at a heavy price. Caleb, mortally wounded, lay dying in Jebediah's arms. Sarah and Emily knelt beside him, tears streaming down their faces. "Thank you, Caleb," Sarah whispered, her voice choked with emotion. They buried him on a hillside overlooking the valley, marking his grave with a simple wooden cross. After burying Caleb, Jebediah knew they couldn't stay in the valley. It was too dangerous, too close to the outlaws. They needed to find a new place to call home, a place where they could feel safe and secure. They traveled for several days, searching for a suitable location. Finally, they stumbled upon a fertile valley nestled in the foothills of the mountains. A clear stream flowed through the valley, providing a source of fresh water, and the surrounding land was rich and fertile. Jebediah, Sarah, and Emily knew that this was the place. This was where they could rebuild their lives, where they could find peace and happiness. They began to construct a small cabin, working together, their hands calloused, but their spirits strong. As they built their new home, they reflected on their journey, on the hardships they had endured, and on the bonds they had forged. They had lost so much, but they had also gained so much more. They had found each other, and they had found hope in the most unexpected of places. The sisters were safe, the outlaws were defeated, and the future, though uncertain, held the promise of a new beginning. The conflict was resolved, leaving the sisters with a chance to rebuild their lives in a safe and fertile valley, carrying the memory of Caleb's sacrifice and the strength of their newfound family. They were finally given a chance to build the home they had always dreamed of. As the weeks turned into months, Jebediah found himself changing in ways he never thought possible. The solitary mountain man, who had once shunned human contact, now found himself embracing the company of the sisters. He realized that he was no longer alone, that he had found a new family, a new purpose in life. He decided to stay in the valley, to help the sisters establish a new life, to protect them from harm, and to provide them with the love and support they needed. He taught them how to hunt, how to fish, how to build a sturdy home, and how to survive in the wilderness. He became a father figure to them, offering them guidance, wisdom, and unwavering support. They saw beyond his gruff exterior, recognizing the kind, compassionate man beneath. They cared for him, nursed him when he was sick, and offered him their love and friendship. Lily, with her innocent charm and unwavering affection, completely melted Jebediah's heart. She saw him as a grandfather figure, showering him with hugs and kisses and reminding him of the joy and laughter he had lost so many years ago. Together, they formed an unconventional family, bound by love, loyalty, and a shared history of loss and resilience. They worked together, played together, and supported each other through thick and thin. They had found a new home, a new purpose, and a new family in the most unexpected of places. Jebediah, changed by his experience with the sisters, decided to abandon his solitary life and embrace the opportunity to help them build a new future. He realized that he had more to offer than just his skills as a mountain man. He had love, compassion, and a desire to make a positive difference in the world. He chose to stay and become a permanent part of their lives, filling the void left by their parents and providing them with the security and stability they desperately needed. He helped them build a farm, plant crops, and raise livestock. He taught them how to read and write, sharing his knowledge of the world. He protected them from danger, keeping a watchful eye on the surrounding territory. He became their guardian, their mentor, and their friend. And so, the unlikely alliance of a grizzled mountain man and 3 orphan sisters transformed into a loving, supportive family, bound together by shared experiences and an unwavering commitment to each other. They had overcome adversity, found hope in the most unexpected of places, and created a new life filled with love, laughter, and purpose. They had proven that family wasn't just about blood, but about love, loyalty, and the willingness to stand by each other through thick and thin. Years passed. The small cabin grew into a sturdy farmhouse, surrounded by fields of golden wheat and grazing livestock. The valley flourished, a testament to their hard work and unwavering determination. Sarah, Emily, and Lily grew into strong, capable women, their faces etched with the wisdom of experience and the joy of a life well lived. Jebediah, his hair now silver, but his eyes, still sharp, watched them with pride, his heart filled with love. He had found a new family, a new purpose, and a new sense of belonging. He was no longer the solitary mountain man, haunted by the ghosts of his past. He was a father, a mentor, and a friend, surrounded by the love of his chosen family. The final scene unfolds on a bright, sunny afternoon. Sarah is tending to the vegetable garden, her hands calloused but her touch gentle. Emily is teaching Lily how to ride a horse, her voice filled with encouragement and laughter. Jebediah is sitting on the porch, whittling a piece of wood, his face relaxed and content. A gentle breeze rustles through the trees, carrying the scent of wildflowers and the sound of birdsong. The scene is one of peace, tranquility, and contentment. It is a testament to the power of unexpected connections, the resilience of the human spirit, and the possibility of second chances in the Wild West. Though Caleb is no longer with them in body, his spirit lives on in their hearts. They remember his kindness, his faith, and his unwavering commitment to helping others. They honor his memory by living their lives with purpose, compassion, and love. The final shot pans out, showing the valley bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. The farmhouse stands tall and proud, a beacon of hope in the vast wilderness. The sisters, Jebediah, and the memory of Caleb are a testament to the power of human connection, the ability to overcome adversity, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Their story is a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope, there is always love, and there is always the possibility of a brighter future. The final image encapsulates the power of unexpected connections and second chances in the Wild West, where a broken mountain man and 3 abandoned sisters found solace, family, and a future filled with hope, demonstrating that love and compassion can bloom even in the harshest of environments. They built a home and a life together,